During this video, we're going to cover finding rafters and attaching feet to those rafters. So let's get started. There's a few methods on finding your rafter, assuming your roof has them. So one of the most easiest methods is to bang with a hammer, and you can actually bang along the roof and actually hear a change in tone and and that will give you a rough estimate of where your rafter is. And then you would test with pilot holes and find the exact front and leading and rear edge of your rafter. You want to know these things are 1.5 inches wide, so you want to know exactly where they are for when you put in your lag bolt, which is typically a 5/16 bolt. You want to make sure that you're in the very center of that rafter, because we don't want to damage our rafter. Once we actually deliver the lag bolt to the rafter, we'll go underneath and do a visual check and make sure we haven't split our rafter, make sure we still have a structural integrity in our roof. So that's one method of the banging with the hammer. The technically advanced, most expensive method is to buy a sonar used piece of equipment by Bosch that actually rolls along the roof and gives you an actual graphical representation of the rafters. That's a very precise instrument. It's an expensive instrument, but if you're doing a lot of this work, it might be the way to go. Another methodology to finding rafters is actually getting in the attic and locating the rafters where you want to attach and actually drilling through next to the rafter. So when the drill comes up here outside and I see it, I know that that is the one edge of my rafter. And that's another pretty accurate way to determine where your feet need to go on your roof. Once you find the location of the rafters, I usually use a nice wax marker that's going to come off in the rain, but I use this on composition shingle roofs, which is a really common roof type in the eastern United States. So I get around and I mark the actual leading edge of both sides of my rafter, and I'm marking the center of my rafter in a line with my other feet going across the roof. And so I've marked this, and I put my pilot hole right there ready for my lag bolt. And I'm going to set my lag bolt right in the center. Before I drive my lag bolt, I will pre-drill with the appropriate size pilot bit, which is the size of that is a function of the diameter of the shaft of my lag bolt and the wood type of my rafter. At this point, once we've established where our rafters are, we have drilled our pilot hole in the appropriate spots for our feet. Those pilot holes need to be lined up with, usually you could use a string, but some visual line, because they need to be in a line, because our rail is metal and doesn't bend. The layout of that rail, I usually will reference the strongest visual line. For our roof here, there's a strong visual line behind me, the top of the roof. And I will probably use that, so when I'm looking at the array from the ground, the array looks as if it's square on the roof. Because the challenge we have is we're about to put a very perfect rectangle, that is our modules that don't bend and they're all very square, onto a roof which is not square or flat. So we need to make it look attractive from the ground so it doesn't look crooked. So at this point we've drilled our pilot holes, and now we are ready to mount our feet into our roof. This roof is a composition shingle, as I mentioned before, and we'll be attaching it with an L-foot, which is the simplest and quickest way to do it. It's a very common method. We call it the L-foot because it's shaped like an L. This has been an old method that's been used for decades in the industry. It is a method that does not have flashing, which to some is to its detriment, because now we're up on the roof and we're putting holes in the roof, and if there's any type of leaking, they'll be coming to ask you, since you were the last one on the roof with a drill. So there are sealant compounds for every roof type. Choosing the ones that are compatible with your roof type is essential. Make sure it's compatible with the roof type, and even recommended by the racking manufacturer if they do have recommendations. For our procedure today, we're going to be using a simple L-foot. We're not going to be using any flashing. We have drilled our pilot holes, and mainly the thing left to do is to attach them with our drill, lag bolt, and washer. So the lag bolts typically are 3-inch lag bolt, 5/16 diameter. This is a typical one. You might be able to get away with a smaller one. Often in a high wind area, depending on the conditions, you might need a larger one. This is the bolt that I use more often than not. Want to include a washer to help spread the weight out before I attach it to my foot, and I'll be attaching it like so into my rafter. I will not tighten it completely. I will put several on and leave them slightly loose so I have a little bit of wiggle so I can attach my rail and do some final adjustments before I tighten them fixed into the roof, and that will be the final time I tighten that bolt. Okay, got my cordless drill. Some of you might like the impact driver, becoming very common. Some people are inclined to not use a pilot hole with those because they can drive a lag bolt without a pilot hole. That's not, I discourage you from that because that's only going to make the chance of splitting your rafter increasing. So, again, I'm going to keep it a little bit loose so I have a little up and down adjustment after I set my other feet, because they do need to be perfectly in a line. So I'm going to mount the rest of these feet, line them up, and then we'll look at attaching the rail to the feet.